Hey everyone, I'm Chris Latimer, and if you want to take your unstructured data and get it into a vector database in a way that's going to give you accurate search results, there's no better option than a RAG pipeline in Vectorize. In this video, I'm going to give you a deeper dive into creating RAG pipelines, but if you just want a 90-second overview, you can check out this video instead. To get started, you're going to need to go to platform.vectorize.io, create a free account. I'll show you a few of the premium features along the way, but you can follow along on the free plan with no problem. Okay, once you have your account set up and you sign in, you are going to land here on a dashboard that looks like this one. And the first thing I want to show you is this menu item called New RAG Pipeline. So let's click on it over here. This is going to bring up the pipeline editor. We can dismiss this little notification. And we can give our pipeline a name. I'm going to call this Dropbox Zoning, because over here in Dropbox, I have a bunch of PDFs that are from the city of Denver that describe all the building codes and zoning regulations that builders would have to think about if they were building roads or commercial properties or houses or anything else. And we'll use this to populate our vector database today. Let's look at one of these. Let's look here. Okay, so why did I want to use these docs? I wanted to use these documents because they're a good mixture of kind of simple PDFs that have mostly text, as well as things that are a little bit more complex. Like this has, somewhat complex layout. We have this little, table here, and we've got a, interesting looking, heading. As we go down, it's mostly text. This is all fairly straightforward. But across all of these documents that we have in the zoning folder, we're going to have a mix of images and diagrams and tables and text and complex layouts. And using all this, I think, will give you a sense of the things you can do with the vectorized RAG pipeline. Now, to get started, back here on the pipeline editor, we need to select a source. And so we're going to pick Dropbox. So this is, Chris's Dropbox. And let's authorize this. So do I know and trust the developer? Yes, I know and trust the developer. Okay, Vectorize would like to connect. Great. Let's just click on Allow here. And we can now create our Dropbox integration. Now, before we go on, what we likely need to do is to give a folder. So all the docs that I'm working on are in my zoning folder. And the next thing we need to do is to set up our extractor and chunker. So we're going to find all the documents here in Dropbox. But now we need to start processing those. And there are a few decisions we need to make, including how are we going to extract the data from our PDFs? And then how are we going to chunk that data up to get it ready for entry into our vector database? Now, on the extraction side, we have three modes that you can run in. So we have what we call fast. And fast is going to be really good for your basic text PDFs, things that are not really complex in layout. They don't have a lot of tables. They don't have a lot of images that you want to caption. And you just want sort of basic text extraction. Fast is going to work great for that. We also have Vectorize Iris. Now, Iris is going to be our vision model. It's fine-tuned vision model that's going to do things like table extraction. It's going to do image captioning. It's going to do a much better job with those complex PDFs at getting the LLM chunks that it can contextualize and understand where they came from. I found this in a table, and the table was called Rules About Zoning. The other thing we have here is the mixed mode. What mixed mode is going to do is going to try to use the fast extractor. If for whatever reason that fast extractor can't work, which we'll often see with things like scan documents, things that are just images, then we will skip over our fast extractor. We'll use Iris. And so you could try to use the faster, cheaper model where you can, and then just upgrade to the Iris model when you need to. Iris does have a little bit of a surcharge per page that gets processed here, so be aware of that. For our purposes here, I'm going to use Vectorize Iris. If you're following along with your own docs, you can decide which of these is going to work best for you. And then you can pick your chunk size here. So how big of a chunk do we want? Do we want to have larger chunks, smaller chunks? Iris is always going to give you back Markdown. If you use the fast extractor, you're going to have other options here in terms of using some natural language processing to decide where to break chunks up. Iris, because it's a Markdown extractor, we're going to break on headings. We're going to try to keep the headings together within this chunk size. And then you have an option here in terms of where you are going to populate your data. So if you already have a database, maybe you're using Pinecone and you want to use a Pinecone database, no problem. Bring your own database is fully supported. And you can see here we have options like Couchbase and DataStax, Elasticsearch, Pinecone, and others. Now, the one I'm going to use here today, I'm just going to use the built-in vector database. Easiest option by far. You don't have to worry about managing separate infrastructure and so forth. And the only thing we need to do next is we just need to save and deploy our pipeline, which we can do right up here. It'll take maybe 10 to 15 seconds for your pipeline to get saved. First, we save off all of the configuration to the database, and then we actually deploy all of the infrastructure needed for your pipeline. And as soon as that's done, the pipeline is going to start processing those docs in Dropbox, and it's going to start backfilling our vector index. Now, if you're using Vectorize Iris, it will take a little bit for Iris to process its way through larger documents. That's because it's using a vision model under the covers. And so you can imagine it's taking the images of those pages, it is sending those into the model. The model has to generate a markdown representation. We have to then post-process that markdown to get to the point where we have something that is an accurate representation of the document. So if you're using Iris, be aware that it will be a little bit longer of a delay before you start seeing the processing happening in your vector database process. It shouldn't be more than a few minutes at the most before you start seeing processing happening. And that's really if you have some pretty big docs. Some of these zoning docs that we're working with are a couple hundred pages. And so it does take the model a bit for it to make its way through those. But even before this is done, as we're kind of waiting on this to happen, we can come in here to our Documents tab. We can see all the documents that have been discovered so far, and we can see where it's at in the processing pipeline. And so some of these are done, only smaller docs that just have a single chunk, and we'll see some that are still in extracting. Usually the ones that are still in extracting after a minute or so, they're going to be the bigger docs, and it just takes a little bit to get those processed. And then as this gets populated, we can actually start playing around with our data over here in the RAG sandbox. Let's take a look here. User determination of outdoor. This is some really super exciting stuff I'm showing you here today. Donation and distribution. Let's take a look at that doc. So what is this doc about? Okay, that doc is about Denver zoning, former chapter, limited outdoor on-site donation and distribution. Includes little free libraries and similar activities. Okay. No taller than 5 feet. Okay. So let's say in the RAG sandbox here, this is a nice little interactive tool. This lets us take our vector data and start playing around with it before we go and build a full application, and figure out sort of the best prompt to use and the best way to configure, our retrieval settings here, for example. So what are some limitations on donations? I think I kind of butchered that. What did this actually say? On-site donation. For on-site donations. Okay. Now, hopefully we get back something from this PDF. Okay, there we go. That was our PDF that we were after. That's where the answer was in our use determination outdoor and on-site donations. And here, not unsurprisingly, we had some good content in here that's going to help answer this question. We found that content, and then we took that along with the prompt, passed that to our LLM, which in this case is our Grok Llama 3.370 billion. And it came back and told us all the things that we could have found if we had an hour to sit down and read however many pages are in maybe not an hour, 14 pages, however fast you read, 14 minutes, if you're maybe a medium reader. So this is a nice little way to play around with your vector data. And so as this is processing, we can see it'll make its way through everything in short order. And then as it's done, once it's done, and you played around with the RAG sandbox and you kind of know what your prompts are and things like that, then we can come here to this Connect tab. And the Connect tab is where we can now use this data in our application for real. And this is just a RESTful endpoint right here. So we have the endpoint that you see here. You'll get a token right up here in this Manage Access Tokens. And then down here, if you want to play around with it in curl, you can copy this to the clipboard. We also have snippets here in JavaScript and in Python. And one other cool thing that I'll show you here at the end is I'll show you this chatbot feature, which if you're not using something like N8N or Pipedream or some other platform where you're integrating Vectorize into a broader workflow, you just want to have the chat application. This little chatbot is really nice. It uses the Vercel AI SDK UI. Really good starting point. I'm a little biased because I made it, but I like it. So hopefully you like it too. One thing that, I used Iris. I said, let's use Iris for all of our documents in this. But you maybe aren't sure because there is a cost to Iris. Iris costs, two-ish cents per page, depending on the plan that you're on. And that can rack up if you have a lot of stuff. So one nice thing you can do if you aren't sure exactly which option you want to use is you can try the extraction tester before you start building your pipeline. And so the extraction tester, let's take that doc that we looked at before. Back on Dropbox. This is the same doc we saw, back over here. It's got a few diagrams. It's got, nothing crazy. It should do a pretty good job on this. Let's run it through the fast extractor. And the fast extractor is, it's going to be good for basic stuff. I mean, it was really fast. We were waiting around for the pipeline to get all the Iris stuff processed. The upside to the fast extractor is you're not waiting around. It happens really fast. You can see exactly how this gets chunked based on your chunking strategy. So these are the text chunks that would go into the vector database. And, this is not bad. I mean, this is not a bad result, for that document. I mean, it did a pretty good job of pulling out sort of the main content in the page and handling our, chunk limit. If we said, well, maybe I don't like the way this is being split. Maybe I'd like to, increase this a bit. Like, what would it look like if I had, a 1,000 token chunks, which is an approximation, by the way. It's hard to get exactly 1,000 token chunks. But we can test this and we can see sort of, what's our chunking strategy. This is a nice way to kind of visually understand, how different, different chunk sizes are going to be put into your vector database. And you can also, see this as Markdown. Like we will try our best to get this into, some Markdown representation for you. Now, if we use Iris on this, and Iris will be, better in a lot of ways, but not in the way of how fast it is, because it is a vision model, right? So you can imagine if you were, and vision models work similar to, they're called vision language models because they work similar to like ChatGPT. So you can imagine taking, a 14-page PDF and going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, spit this out. It takes a little bit for it to work, but as you can see here, now what we're getting down, what we're getting back is, better Markdown representations. We'll also do things in here like image captioning. So if you do have some things that are multimodal and you want to take the content and make sure the LLM understands sort of what was in here, not just text, but also images and diagrams and things. This is going to do a nice job. If we had tables, I don't think this document had a lot of tables, but if it did, we would see that the tables come across as nice Markdown tables. We can see how that gets rendered, and then we can see the actual Markdown chunks here as well. So this is a good sort of first step. If you're not sure which extractor you want to use, you can use the extraction tester. And then, I'm not going to go into it here, but we do have a really nice tool as well over here called RAG Evaluations. So, the extraction tester will help you see visually how your chunks are going to come out. RAG Evaluations are going to be a great way for you to figure out what's the best embedding model, what's the best chunking strategy using a data-driven approach. And I've got a good video on that. I'm going to leave a link to that right up here for you if you want to check that out. But the last thing we'll take a look at back on our RAG pipeline is the chatbot that I had mentioned. So let's see how we're doing here. So we're still chunking our way through all the docs. Again, some of these are several hundred pages. I think some of them are upwards of like 700-800 pages. And so it will take a little bit to get through all of those. In the meantime, let's go here to this chatbot. Now, the chatbot starter, as I mentioned, this is going to be a nice little starter, as the name implies, it's a starter. It's not meant to be the be-all, end-all. It's not saying that you don't need to customize this. In fact, it's really meant for people who do want to do some customization. I just want sort of a quick starter, and this is going to be perfect for you. You can start off by picking the LLM provider. So if you want to use Grok, we have a lot of great Grok models here, including their DeepSeek model. And if you want to use OpenAI, you can do that as well, and you can pick the model here. You can also change this once you download the chatbot. I'll show you how to do that too. So pick the option you want here. I'm going to use OpenAI and I'm going to use O3 Mini. So I'm going to download this chatbot right here. Now let's unzip this. Let's open this up in a new terminal window. And I mentioned this is a Next.js application, so just like any other JavaScript application, we can do npm install or pnpm install. It's going to get all the dependencies downloaded for us, and then once those are done, we can open this up. I'm going to use VS Code. It's not cool enough to use cursor yet, but I'm getting there. And there's two files that we need to take a look at. So we need this env.development and env.production. These are going to come preset with these models. So actually, if you decide later on, like, I don't really want to use O3 Mini, it's too expensive, I want to use GPT-4o, just update the model here. It's going to switch the model that you're using. And it's going to come pre-populated with the index for your RAG pipeline right up here. So the other two things that we're going to need a vectorized token and an OpenAI API key. So let me show you where you can get those. Let's come back here on the same tab we were on where we got this chatbot. We've got the RAG, the retrieval endpoint URL right here. We also have this button that says Manage Access Token. So click on that. That's going to take you here to this view of access tokens where you can get a new token. Depending on sort of what you want to do, if you working with something where token rotation is important to you, then you can set an expiration that's a little quicker. But in this case, I'm going to make one that is really short-lived because I don't want anybody to see my token and steal it. But if it's you're building just a little internal chat app, you can set this to never expire, and that way you don't have to worry about tokens expiring on you. But feel free to rotate them as well. Let's copy that to the clipboard. And then let's go back into VS Code. We can put our token in here. We can put our token in here. And then we can also put in our OpenAI key, which I'm going to do off camera. Let's take a quick look here at the two parts of this chat application that you should be aware of. So there's this page.tsx. And the main thing you're probably going to want to tweak in here is the placeholder questions that we have. And I'll show you where those pop up here in just one second. And then likewise, over here in the route, this is where you're going to find all of the prompts that are used. So if you want to tweak the prompt, you want things to behave a little bit different, you don't like the way this is formatting references to the chunks that come back, as we'll see here in a second, you can change all that here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to come over here. Now you don't have to do this, but I need to do one quick thing because I already had a vectorized token in my environment variables, unlikely that you did. So you don't have to worry about that step. So once you put in your OpenAI key, you put in your vectorized token, you should be able just to come and say npm run dev. And this should start our chatbot up on port 3000, unless you're already running something on port 3000, then it'll be 3001 or 2 or. If you're working with tools like N8N or Pipedream, Vectorize is really a tool that you want to have in your toolbox because building out workflows and building out data pipelines are two really different things. It's easy to get in over your head. It's easy to waste a lot of time trying to get the data the way you want it, where it's going to perform well for your AI agents. And Vectorize really just takes the guesswork out of that for you. And I've got a great video for you that's going to be right up here as well if you want to see how we can take vectorized RAG pipelines and get those into N8N. And until next time, I am Chris Latimer. Happy building, everyone. Take care.